She spent years building the perfect illusion: a loving wife, a successful business owner, a woman preparing to become a mother. But behind the carefully crafted social media posts and smiling photographs was a secret so disturbing that investigators would later describe it as almost unimaginable. When the truth finally emerged, an entire community was left asking one terrifying question: how far can someone go to protect a lie? From the outside, Taylor Parker appeared to have an ordinary life. Friends and acquaintances often saw someone who projected confidence and happiness. According to court records and investigative reporting, she presented herself as expecting a child and shared that image with people around her. But behind closed doors, investigators later alleged that many aspects of that story were fabricated. As the months passed, maintaining the deception became increasingly difficult. Those closest to her had no idea that the pressure of keeping up appearances was growing. Every conversation, every social media post, every interaction made the situation more fragile. The image she had constructed was elaborate, detailed, and deeply personal. And like all illusions built on unstable ground, it was only a matter of time before the cracks began to show. According to prosecutors, Taylor Parker's false pregnancy claims became more elaborate over time. Investigators later presented evidence that she had purchased baby items and continued telling friends and family she was preparing to give birth. The timeline described in court showed that the deception had continued for months. As the expected due date approached, the pressure intensified. A question began hanging over everything: what would happen when there was no baby? Investigators would later argue that the answer to that question set in motion a tragic chain of events. The purchases, the conversations, the carefully maintained appearances, all of it pointed towards someone who had invested deeply in a story that had no natural ending. The closer the supposed due date came, the more desperate the situation became. And desperation, as investigators would come to understand, had already begun shaping what was about to happen next. Court records describe how Taylor Parker connected with a woman named Reagan Hancock, who was expecting a child. The two had communicated before meeting in person. According to prosecutors, Parker arranged a visit under the pretense of purchasing children's clothing. Nothing about the planned meeting appeared unusual. For Reagan and her family, it seemed like a normal day. Investigators would later allege that something far darker had already been planned long before that morning arrived. Authorities responded after Reagan Hancock was found seriously injured. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, and investigators immediately began securing evidence. According to court testimony, officers quickly identified inconsistencies in Taylor Parker's account. Witness statements, physical evidence, and surveillance footage helped investigators reconstruct the day's events. As detectives pieced together the timeline, the carefully maintained image that Parker had built over months began to collapse. Every interview uncovered another contradiction. Every piece of evidence raised another question. Within hours, investigators believed they had uncovered a motive rooted in deception, desperation, and obsession. But as they searched Parker's vehicle and reviewed the evidence, they discovered details that shocked even experienced detectives. The prosecution would later argue that this was not a crime of sudden impulse. It was something far more calculated. As investigators reconstructed the full timeline, they believed they were no longer dealing with a missing piece of evidence or a random act of violence. According to prosecutors, the evidence pointed toward careful planning. What followed would become one of the most disturbing criminal cases in recent Texas history. Detectives interviewed witnesses, examined surveillance footage, collected forensic evidence, and reviewed digital communications. According to court records, they also examined Taylor Parker's online activity, text messages, and purchases made before the crime. Prosecutors later argued that these records helped establish a timeline leading up to the attack. Authorities stated that Parker had maintained the appearance of being pregnant for an extended period, even though investigators alleged that claim was false. As detectives gathered more evidence, they concluded that the deception had become central to understanding the case. Every digital record, every purchase receipt, every message exchanged in the weeks and months prior painted a picture that investigators described as deliberate and methodical. The evidence was not scattered or circumstantial in isolation. When assembled together, prosecutors argued it told a coherent and deeply troubling story. During the trial, the prosecution presented evidence they argued showed planning before the crime. The prosecution described months of deception surrounding a false pregnancy. According to prosecutors, this deception was intended to convince others that Parker was expecting a child. The jury also heard testimony from investigators, forensic experts, and witnesses who described the investigation and the evidence collected. The prosecution argued that the evidence, when viewed together, demonstrated intent and premeditation. Throughout the proceedings, the defense challenged aspects of the prosecution's case and argued on Parker's behalf, as is required in the American justice system. It remained the jury's responsibility to evaluate the evidence presented in court and reach a conclusion based solely on what was proven before them. After hearing testimony and reviewing the evidence, the jury found Taylor Parker guilty of capital murder. Following the verdict, the court sentenced her to death under Texas law. The case received national attention because of both the nature of the crime and the extensive evidence presented during the trial. For the family of Reagan Hancock, the verdict marked the conclusion of the criminal trial. But no courtroom decision could undo the loss they had suffered. The Taylor Parker case prompted discussions across the United States about deception, mental health, violence, and victim protection. Legal experts examined the investigation, journalists analyzed the court proceedings. Communities reflected on how appearances can sometimes conceal profound personal struggles. Above all, the case became a reminder that behind every headline are real people whose lives are forever changed. The case was ultimately resolved through the criminal justice process. Investigators presented evidence, witnesses testified under oath, and a jury reached its verdict. The case remains one of the most disturbing criminal prosecutions in recent Texas history, not because of speculation, but because of the documented facts presented during trial. While the legal proceedings have concluded, the lasting impact on the victims' families and the community continues. Their story is a reminder that truth eventually emerges through careful investigation, evidence, and the rule of law. Some crimes are difficult to comprehend. They remind us how important compassion, honesty, and justice are in every community. Most importantly, they remind us to remember the victims, not only for the tragedy they endured, but for the lives they lived and the loved ones they left behind. The Taylor Parker case reminds us that some of the most disturbing crimes are hidden behind ordinary lives. While the court has reached its verdict, the pain felt by the victim's family will never truly disappear. Cases like this remind us why every investigation matters, why every victim deserves justice, and why the truth must always be pursued. What part of this case shocked you the most? Was there a moment in the investigation that completely changed your perspective? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Every comment is read, and your perspective could be featured in a future documentary. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more true crime investigations, do not forget to like this video to help more people discover these stories. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Share this documentary with friends and family who enjoy true crime, and subscribe to Mysterious Crime and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Every week, we bring you cinematic documentaries covering true crime, cold cases, unsolved mysteries, and the investigations that changed history. Thank you for watching Mysterious Crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, every mystery has a story.